Thank you very much for the invitation, Mr. Klaus from the Namibian Economic Association. We are really pleased to be here, and we are happy to show to Namibians the current status of the Angolan economy. I'm from the Catholic University of Angola. Catholic University of Angola is the first private university in Angola. It was established in 1999. And in 2002, the Catholic University established a research center where I belong, where I am an auxiliary researcher, that we produce various studies on the Angola economy. We annually publish 3 main reports: the Angolan Economic Report, the Angolan Social Report, and the Angolan Energy Report. My presentation today will be based on the newest economic report that we produced, that was launched this year in Luanda. We'll be speaking to give you insight on the gross domestic production of Angola, the overall, how is makeup, the oil influence on the Angolan GDP growth. See, Angola is highly dependent on the oil production and export. And also, we look at the trade to see how is the trade, the import, the export, the main Angolan trade partner in terms of export and in terms of import. And we see that there is little trade between the country in the region. That's why integration must be really the aim to boost the trade within the region. Currently, in terms of macroeconomic fundamental, Angola is really facing a very difficult situation. The inflation rate is very high. In December of 2006 was almost 42%, the inflation rate, 42%. Yes, 42% in December of 2016. But now is reducing. As of May, the inflation rate, the annual inflation rate is now 34%, but still high, very, very high. Why? Because, as we've seen in the presentation, Angola depends very much on the imports. Almost 60% or even 8% of the goods and services that are consumed, Angola imports from other countries. And who help the oil sector generate the foreign currency that allow Angola to import. The oil export has the weight of almost 96% of all Angolan export. 96% of all Angolan export is made of oil. Diamond is less than 2%. Coffee, that before the independence was the main Angolan export product, is less than 1%, just 0.05%, the weight of coffee on the total export. In terms of fiscal revenue, more than 6% of the taxes come from oil sector. See, the government now, the budget is almost deficit every year. Now, let's look at the GDP. As you can see, when the war ended in 2002, the overall GDP of Angola was $15 billion. $15 billion. It has increased a lot up to 2014, about almost $130 billion. As you may know, Angola is the second largest economy in the region after South Africa, and in the continent is the fifth largest economy because we have a GDP. But now in 2016, as you can see, from 2015 to 2016, there is a reduction on the nominal value of the GDP. Why? Due to the drop in the oil prices. In 2016, our GDP was only $96 billion. We can see the impact of oil sector. Is it not? But is the second in the first column, and the third, oil and gas. For most of time was almost 50% of the GDP, but now it starts reducing. Why is it reducing? It's not really that it's true that the non-oil sector also is growing, but the impact of reduction of oil has major impact in the reduction of the oil sector in the overall GDP. Now looking at the growth, the economic growth of Angola, see the first 5 years after the war ended. The Angolan is the last the last line. The Angolan economic growth in 2003 was 2.4, but the highest you can see was in 2007, that almost 14%. But since then, it's starting reducing, starting from 2009, 2008, 2009, due to the financial crisis that impact a lot on the oil production, on the revenue of oil. And from there, we have a very low economic growth. And in last year in 2016, the national account presented a recession of the Angola economy because the growth was negative. Why? If you look at the manufacturing, most of the sector, the growth rate was negative. The manufacturing was -2.3. Even the fisheries, the construction sector. In the manufacturing, on the industry, the main problem that Angolan face is that most of the raw material are imported. Most of raw material are imported. And since we are receiving less revenue from oil, then it's turning difficult for country to import the raw material to be able to make the industry or the manufacturing sector to work, because lack of foreign exchange is difficult. It's very high. We have many companies in industrial zones that are closing because they cannot get access to foreign exchange to be able to import raw material, to be able to produce industrial goods. Now let's look. We have this graph to see. We have two phases in the Angolan economic development. The first that started from 2002 to 2008, as you can see, we had very high economic growth, But now, since 2009 until now, the economic growth is reducing dramatically. Why? Because of the oil sector, and because the government did not take the needed policies to diversify the economy. Because the truth is, Angola earned a lot of money after the war. This economic growth that we can see here from 2002, sorry, I'm not pointing very well, or it's not working. But from 2008, generate a lot of revenue, fiscal revenue and export revenue, that would have enabled the government to diversify the economy. But unfortunately, that did not happen. The 2002 2008, 2009 crisis was the first wake-up call to alert the Angola government, look, you have now to look at the agriculture sector, industry, and other non-oil sector in order to sustain the growth of the country. But it did not happen because in 2009, the prices did not, it recovered very quickly. Very quickly. The recovery of oil price was very quickly, and very quickly also we forgot that we need to diversify. But fortunately, I say, my opinion, fortunately, we have another crisis now that is longer, that started in mid-2014, that oil price is now very, very low. Then the government is now realizing that was necessary. It is necessary to take steps to diversify the Angolan economy. What are the prospects or the projection? This projection from our economic report. You can see the oil GDP, almost the growth will be zero, the oil GDP. Why? Don't forget that Angola is a member of the OPEC, is the organization of the producer and exporter of oil. And we have limit in the amount of the barrel that we can produce and we can export. And also we are facing, some companies are facing technical problem to extract more oil. Before, the oil was extracted onshore, but not in the deep waters. But now they have to go in deep waters that require more investment. But since the price are low, there is no incentive to invest. Then most of oil companies are not investing anymore. Then if they're not investing, it means that in a couple of years, the production will actually decrease or remain almost the same. That's why our projection is that the oil sector will not grow actually. But our hope now is the non-oil sector. And this is important for the regional integration. The non-oil sector, we're speaking about agriculture, construction, industry, services, trade. That's why it's important that Angola really be willing to be part of this free trade zone. But what is holding back the government to sign, in our perspective, is that the Angolan entrepreneurs, the Angola company, they don't have the needed productivity or competitiveness to export their product. And the government is giving them more time in order to be able to be organized and to have well-established firms that can compete with South African firms or even with Namibian firms. But we say that this argument is not so valid because you cannot learn to compete if you don't compete. You have to compete to learn how competition is done. If you close yourself, you will not learn. Then we have to try. We have to try. We have to compete. We have to open our borders. As you can see, we have the non-oil GDP. In overall, the growth of the non-oil GDP is higher than the growth of the oil GDP. That is good for the country because the non-oil GDP is our hope now. Because we need to diversify the economy, and diversification will take place if investment are made in agriculture, industry, service, trade, and other sectors. The agriculture sector in Angola is very important in terms of the employment. Almost 45% of overall employment is from the agriculture sector. In Angola, according to current data, our employment is about 6.5 million people that are employed, 6.5 million people, and almost 2.9 are employed in the agriculture. And the weight of agriculture in the GDP is less than 5%, or is almost 5%. But if you look at the oil sector, that is the biggest, almost 40% of GDP is made of oil, but the employment is only at least 1% of total employment. Then here also we have issue of inequality, how we distribute, because if the oil is the main important sector and employment is very low, because the oil sector is very capital intensive sector, it's not labor intensive, it's capital intensive sector, then Angola needed really to invest in non-oil agriculture and industry or manufacturing. And the funny thing in Angola as well, in agriculture, almost 95% of the land that is cultivated is cultivated by farmers, familiar farmers, that some call subsistence. At university, we don't call them subsistence, because if they are able to cultivate 95% of all land, because they cultivate not only for themselves, but also for the market, although in the small scale. And in small scale, why? Because they don't have the modern equipment to produce more, because they are still using the traditional equipment for agriculture. We can see in this graph, we have the weight of each sector in the GDP. You see that agriculture, livestock, and forest, on average, is 4% since 2002. There is not really a big change in 14 years, because the weight is almost the same. The oil and gas sector is reducing, but who is winning the largest share is the services. The manufacturing is almost also the same, around 5%, and the construction sector as well. Now, here we divide in the national account, or even at university, we try always to separate the oil economy and the non-oil economy. We are looking here just at the non-oil GDP. What is the major or the largest sector within the non-oil GDP? As you can see, is the state. We left some things in there in Portuguese. It's also for you to learn some word in Portuguese. Estado in Portuguese, state or the government, actually is in some services are the largest part of the non-oil economy. Then we have agriculture is 8% now, construction 10%, manufacturing 8%. Investment need to be made on agriculture, manufacturing, electricity, because without electricity, it is impossible to have a well-developed industrialization program. And fortunately, government is now really investing heavily on the electricity sector, constructing new dams. Currently, we have Kambambe that is supplying energy or electricity in Luanda, and now Kapanda is built, and also Lauka is the new dam that is being built. Let's see if it will solve the the problem. Is the manufacturing. You see, the growth of the manufacturing, looking at long period from 1998 to 2060, on average, the manufacturing sector was growing at rate of 5, almost 60%. But if we look just for 2009, 2016, the growth rate is lower due to the crisis that the country is facing. Within the manufacturing, we have the food and the beverages. In 2009 and in 2001, the largest share within the manufacturing was for the food. But now, currently, in 2016, we have beverage. And this sector actually is doing quite well. And we have some companies that are actually exporting beverages, soda, juice, and other beverage to other countries, even in Africa. Then is Kuka, do you know Kuka? Okay, that's good. Kuka and Tigra and and the blue. Yeah. Okay, that's good that you know Kuka. Kuka is the largest beer producer in Angola, the largest beer producer in Angola. Now let's see the influence of oil on the GDP growth in Angola. We divided in 3 periods, 2002, 2008, what is the best period in Angolan economic growth, because the period where Angola had the highest growth after the independence. 2009, 2012, the country was trying to recover from the 2008 crash, and the current phases. Let's see the graph that show all these phases together. The blue line shows the GDP growth. In Portuguese, we say PIB. In English, GDP. PIB, Produto Interno Bruto. In English, Gross Domestic Production. The blue line is the GDP growth, and the orange is the price of oil. You can see it's almost perfect. The growth rate, the economic growth of Angola is linked to what happened to the oil in the international market. That is not good for the diversification or even for the regional integration. That's why many Angolans that used to come to Namibia to buy things is now difficult, because there is no foreign exchange to come here. Now let's speak about the trade, foreign trade. This graph shows the total export of Angola, total export from 2002 to 2016. See how the oil export was evolving. On average, was about $50 billion of export. $50 billion a year on average. We have here, the blue line represents the oil export. The blue line is the oil export. The orange is the non-oil export. Now you can see how insignificant is the non-oil export. That's why, unfortunately, Angola is the second country in the world with the highest concentration of export after Iraq or Iraq. The United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, every year they produce the Herfindahl Index that measures the level of the export concentration. And Angola is the second after Iraq. Even among the African producing oil country, Angola by far has the highest level of the export concentration. That's why anything that happens to the oil market in terms of price will affect Angolan economy. The non-oil export, we're talking diamond. Diamond is the size of diamond in total export is about 1.5 or 2%. Yes. Then we have beverages, wood, and some fish as well. But in altogether, is less than $2 billion. Less than $2 billion. But the oil export, you see, is, on average, was $15 billion. But now it's dropped dramatically from 2014 onward. In 2016 was only about 32 or 30 billion dollars of the oil export. Looking at the main export partners. Now here you can see if the regional integration is working or not. The main Angolan export partner, we have China in first place, because most of the oil goes to China. Then we have India, Spain, France. Then we can see South Africa. Namibia is not there in terms of export partner. And this is actually the problem, because we Angolans come to Namibia to buy things, but you Namibians don't go to Angola to buy things. In terms of export, Namibia is not among the top 15 main export partner. Just South Africa in the region. Then we have really to the politicians, the government, even the entrepreneurs, because as it was said, it's not only the government can lead, or we cannot rely only on the government for the integration. The businessmen themselves also, we have to integrate to see ways that Angolan companies can collaborate with Namibian companies to produce together in some aspect, agriculture, industry, way that they can produce together and to offer the product in the common market. Now looking at the imports. See how big is the Angolan import. It's on average is about $45 billion a year of imports. $45 billion of the import every year. The blue represent import of services, and the orange represent import of good, tangible good. But since 2014 as well, is reducing. Now the extraction of our imports. Okay. The first cycle is from 2002. Let's look at the structure of the Angolan import in 2002. We see almost 60% of the import was consumption good or finished good. Almost 60% of the Angolan import was finished good. Good that you just buy and eat it or consume it. 30% was capital good, and 12% was intermediate good that are used for like raw material or to transform for the industry. Now let's look the picture in 2015, almost 13 years after. Can you see any change? Our import structure is as much as was in 2002. Why? Because the monetary policy, I can say that, the monetary policy that is set make the import cheaper than the production. Angola exchange rate, Kwanza, with dollar, is over-evaluated. Why? Because for the central bank perspective, since domestic production is low and the country depends on import, let's make the import cheaper, because it also helps the inflation rate to be lower. The inflation rate, the prices, because if the exchange rate is evaluated, it will have impact on the prices of the imported good. and the inflation rate will escalate. But we have a trade-off. A trade-off. Will you keep this forever? It's a big question that we have in Angola with central bank and Minister of Finance. Because in this moment now, in Angola, I can say we have three levels of the exchange rate. We have the exchange rate that is practiced by the central bank, where the central bank sell the foreign currency to the commercial banks. That is 165 kwanzas per dollar, 165 kwanzas per dollar. Then we have the exchange rate where every citizen or any economic entrepreneur would like to buy foreign exchange, go to the commercial bank to buy. We buy on average at 200, on average 220. Then, if you don't have access to the commercial bank, you go on the street, where you buy at least 300 or 400. Then the gap between the BNA, Banco Nacional de Angola, the central bank, exchange rate, and the informal is really huge. Sorry? Okay. Now, we did this graph just to show we have the total consumption, including family and state, is the blue line, and the total imports of goods and services, that is the orange line, and the gray line is the weight in terms of percentage. As you can see, almost from 2002 to 2009, there is a perfect correlation between the blue line and the blue and the orange line. It means that almost all the goods that the country consumed was imported perfectly. But fortunately, from 2010 onward, things start to change a little bit. Now, beside imports, there is a little domestic production that is helping the consumers. That is a good news. But this gap can be reduced if Angola really be willing to be part of the regional integration, the free trade zone of SADC, that will increase the competitiveness of our companies and produce for more consumers, not just for the Angolans. Now, currently, is about 65% of the total consumption is imported in Angola. In terms of main import partners of Angola, main import partners, again, we have China, Portugal. Actually, Portugal is the main, but just last year that China overcome Portugal. Portugal was the Angolan colonizer. Then, for historical reason, is obvious the Angolan go Portugal to buy foods or other things. Portugal is the second. Then we have South Africa. Then Namibia, lastly. That was just in 2010. 2010, Namibia was among 14 or 10 top Angolan importer in 2010. 2013, 14, and 15, no, wasn't at the bottom. Now, in this graph, we linked the Angolan current account, the Angolan fiscal deficit, and in comparison with oil prices. We see how dependent our balance of payment, the current account, depends much on oil price, the level of oil prices. Also, the fiscal deficit. Now we are running, in this moment, the debt, the public debt, is above 60% of overall GDP. The public debt is 60%. If we include the public enterprises, if you consider that the debt of the public enterprises as also public debt, it can go up to 70% of the public debt. And it's really scaring us as analysts to see we'll be able to pay. Of course, we can pay this, but look at the prospect of the economic growth of the country and also the interest rate that we must pay for those debt. This is the foreign exchange reserves of Angola. The foreign exchange reserve, the amount of money that we have to help the imports. In 2009 was about $12 billion, reached the highest level in 2013, 31 billion, but now is completely decreasing. Until December of 2016 was 20 billion in terms of reserve, and it could cover 6 months of the imports. Still good. Still good. But if we do not increase the export of the non-oil, it will be difficult. That's why Angola really must diversify its economy. Now, we also brought this graph to see the foreign direct investment. This data is really scaring if you look well. The foreign direct investment. We have the foreign direct investment that the foreigners do in Angola, the money that they bring to Angola, that is inflows, and the foreign direct investment that Angolans are doing abroad, that is outflows. What you can see, the blue line is the net foreign direct investment, the difference between inflows and outflows. Since 2005, almost 2005, up 2014, the foreign direct investment net was negative, which means that there were more Angolans investing abroad than foreigners investing in the country. If we sum all those investments from 2002 to 2016, we can see over 14 years, the money that Angolan invested abroad is about $200 billion. $200 billion. Almost the twice of the size of our economy. $200 billion. And the money that the foreigner brought in the Angola economy is about $175 billion. Now, if this money was invested in the region, it would boost the economic growth in the region. I don't know if it. We don't know where this money is being invested, and this is official. This is sorry, Portugal. Say Portugal. Brazil. Oh, you know, people outside know things better than we are inside. But now is the time for the Angolan to bring back this money to be invested in the country, because when we need money to diversify our economy. And the funny thing is, if you look at the balance of payment, we have the item that is profits and dividends. The foreign companies, when they make dividends or profit, they repatriate, they send back to their countries. And on average, the foreign companies in Angola, they send almost $4 billion of profit every year, $4 billion. But there is no record of the profit of those $200 billion that Angolan invested abroad. Unfortunately. No. And those data from the central bank, if you go to look at the Angolan balance of payment, you can see those data, it's public data. Now, just to finalize, some sector that I think that can really benefit from the regional integration in Angola, in the SADC. For the Angolan perspective, the sector of electricity can really be one of the sectors that can benefit from the integration. Looking the electricity, looking not only in terms of, because we have also, Namibia has potential for the renewable energy. It also both this around, split it in the region. Agriculture, we need to develop agriculture. The value chain, things that, because agriculture can supply raw material for agro industry or manufacturing. Then if there is a regional value chain of agricultural product, can really help the region. Oil derivatives is very important as well, because I don't know if you know, almost 95% of the production of the oil production, Angola sends it as a raw material. 95%. Just 5% is refined in the country. And for using fuels for the cars, for the generator, actually Angola imports the finish. Now we are trying to set. They are trying to set the refinery in Lubito to be able to refine, because the current refinery, they have not big capacity to be able to refine a lot of fuels. Okay, muito obrigado. This was my presentation.
Maybe to Paulo, just wanted to make a comment. You raised a concern as to why Namibia doesn't trade more and Angolans. I think it's an issue of integration as well. I want to ask, how ready is Angola to integrate and liberalize? Just on average, an SME from Angola will come with 10,000 Namibian dollars here, spend 2.5 probably on accommodation a week, shop for 8,000 and make profits back of 400%. Similarly, an SME from Namibia goes to Angola with 10,000, they'll spend 7,000 just on accommodation. So those issues, I think, are very critical to actually look at. And then you've got also an issue of that you can't repatriate your profits. We've got a lot of our businesses whose money is still stuck in Angola. So how can you really entice integration, especially as neighbors? To Ndita maybe and Trudy, the issue of integration as well. We would speak about this, but in terms of implementation, we can have all those nice flaggy institutions, but in terms of implementation, if it doesn't trickle down to the people that are supposed to actually implement that, we have a problem. Just a few weeks ago, at the entry point, we had a visitor, a business person from Zambia coming, sorry to mention Zambia at this stage, but the person was asked, you were here 2 weeks ago, what do you want again?
Right.
So you have all these things that you have to really address at entry points, customs issues. The issue that happened in Zambia, it's a non-tariff barrier, but it became more expensive than the tariff itself. So we need to really address those issues.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Yeah. I'll pose the questions to the speakers, and then we can have a final round before we move on to closing remarks. Dita, can I ask you to answer the question on the time frame of the bill, the role of regional integration, and what role the World Trade Organization plays, and then the one on the All African Passport?
Right.
Regarding the Wealth Fund, at university we call it just a peanut. The impact is really insignificant, just $5 billion $5 billion was the amount that the Angola government used to spend on oil subsidy every year. It's nothing in comparison, for instance, looking at the Norwegian oil fund, that is $800 billion, or Timor-Leste, that is $15 billion. Just we cannot count on the sovereign fund. And recently is losing its value because most of the investment they're doing, they are just bringing loss instead of profit. It's worth now almost 4 billion or 4.2 instead of 5 billion. Now, your concern is true. In fact, since most of the infrastructure in Angola need to be developed, electricity, water, roads, the cost of doing business in Angola is really high, extremely high, and even the cost of accommodation. The price that you can pay here at 5-star hotel in Namibia, we can pay it for 3 stars or 2 in Angola. Because imagine to running the hotel. The water you have to buy by the cistern, cars that come to fill the big, because the public network is not reliable. The electricity, we have to have generator, and you have to buy fuels every day then the cost of doing business in Angola is extremely high. And why? Because in my perspective, because the monetary policy for years was just to benefit the import instead of benefiting the domestic production.
Isn't one of the reasons why you're not attracting foreign direct investment, FDI, is because you just haven't got investor protection in place? Now, the Namibian companies who've gone there and lost a lot of money are well known and has been all over the media. But small businesses too have lost money, and I just want to use an example. I know you won't be annoyed because I'm not going to mention his name. Is a printing business. It goes from Oshakati and sets up in Angola, provides a printing service which hitherto had not been in existence. And then they get ripped off by their partners. And there's absolutely no protection. So until you get those fundamentals right, Francesco, you're not going to get foreign direct investment into that country. Investors just feel exposed. But maybe you'd like to comment on that. And then to Ndaita quickly. There's a great emphasis on products on the supermarket shelf and garments in the shop and so on and so forth. Should we also not be putting greater focus on services? Because yes, it's all very well to try and sell mahangu cookies in Zambia or whatever, and we see what's happened here. The mahangu cookie gets launched, the minister's there, and on, and 2 months later that product is not even on the shelf because the local companies just don't have the capacity. So now the thing is, the services really, Ndaita, that is where I think Namibia has an advantage. We can actually go into Botswana and some of those neighboring countries, whether it's on IT, the skills such as plumbing, electrical, and I see many heads nodding here. So I think we should just get that mindset changed. The same thing with re-imports, Suta, is that look at the largest furniture retailer in Namibia is Fernmart, a Botswana company quoted on the Gaborone Stock Exchange. They don't make any furniture in Botswana. They actually import it into Walfish Bay. They unpack the containers there, and they've cleaned up the market. They've killed Fernmark and Three Bears and Lewis stores and whatever it is. A little Botswana company. So perhaps these are areas that we should be focusing on more than talking about manufacturing, which seems to be.
Right. Thanks, Danny.
I think I will start with the last, that is easiest. The main problem that we face in Angola is the institutions. Unfortunately, most of the institutions are weak. And because the political regime that Angola has in this moment, if you just depend on one person, it's critical. And it's important to strengthen the institutions, the courts, the police, and otherwise, because most of this foreign direct investment was on oil sectors, not in non-oil sectors. Because in oil sector, they have many other politically exposed people that can protect them. Now, regarding what happened, the main problem was that, okay, the Angolan will come to Namibia with kwanzas and get the Namibian dollars and buy. But the problem, the Namibian, they didn't know what to do with kwanzas. They did not go to Angola with kwanzas to buy. And think, for instance, I don't know what happened in the high level, because if Namibia could buy the oil that Angola produced in kwanzas, for instance, it could facilitate, because the kwanza that was being peeled up here can be used to buy things that Namibian would need as industry, but it did not happen. Only Angolan would come with kwanzas, get Namibian dollars, but Namibia didn't know what to do with the kwanza that was being piled up here.